Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me what will your legacy be? Yeah.
Week 5 and a special guest here on the Postgame show. He's rocking out to the music. And because of the team that our special guest plays for, there is one undefeated team left who actually also beat this player's team previously. But it happens. It happens to the best of us. Gian Avedisian joining us from the Game Breakers. He'll be helping to break down Game 5, and Kyler is along with us as well. You guys know Kyler. So we'll get to Gian in a second. Let's start with his team's game. One of the games that was close throughout. They end up winning by 13, but it is the Game Breakers handing Washed Up Boyz their first loss. And so, we can talk about, and I'll go to Kyler second about, the Washed Up Boyz and who they played. Yes, they beat the Halfway Crooks week 1. They also beat some other teams. I'm not discrediting them being undefeated, but kind of like Jose said in the interview, they played a real team. And so this is a great time to turn it over to Gian. They played a real team, and, take that for what it's worth. Not my words. So I'll throw Jose under the bus on that one. But Gian, talk about your game this week, week 5, coming off of that loss, right, to Lob City. And so in week 5, Washed Up Boyz, a new team. You guys hadn't played them, but looked good, made a ton of shots, had your full team there once again, and looked good. So yeah, how'd it go in week 5?
Yeah, it went really well. We started off shaky. I believe we won every single quarter, but it just wasn't how we like to win it. Normally we like to get a bigger lead, but it was kind of back and forth. Going in, our game plan, what I told the team was the kid Hendel, who is a phenomenal player. Hachi was guarding him. I said, listen, we're going to let that kid go for 40 because no person is going to single-handedly beat us. It's not going to happen. He can go for 40, 50, but we have to limit everybody else on that team cannot score the ball. So if they want to try to go 1-on-4, that's fine. And I think the kid, I don't know his name, number 1, he's pretty athletic. He had 20-something points the week before, and he went 0 for 6 this week. Leroy had a really good game. That dude's just a freak of nature. He's huge. There's nothing really you can do about that. We were living with him shooting because he's a dominant force inside from what I've seen, and he was hitting his shot. So, oh well.
Might have lost him, right, Gian?
Yeah.
All right, we'll see. We'll see if he comes back. But to that point, we're gonna keep rocking. So he was talking about Kevin Gonzalez, number 1. Yeah. So 0 for 6. Hendel LaRolle had 32. Leroy Brown had 20 and 4 threes. Let's go to Kyler and what you saw from really the Washed Up Boyz and how they responded, because they did lose every quarter, but it was close, and they were able to keep it close. Really, and battle and kind of overcome some of those runs. So what'd you see from, the Washed Up Boyz, Kyler?
Yeah, it was yet another really great performance from Hendel LaRolle. Anytime he got the ball, you could see there's a little extra juice in that offense, and they were able to go through him. Only 1 assist, but I think that's harsh. He set up a lot of plays that could have, and it resulted in baskets. But the shooting for Washed Up Boyz has really been their downfall in this game. They've been able to get away with Hendel and Leroy Brown, and as we mentioned before, Kevin Gonzalez putting up big performances, but they went against a team that played tighter defense, and the only 2 people who were really able to cope with it were Hendel LaRolle and Leroy Brown. It's hard to win a game with just 2 people scoring over 6 points.
Yeah, and so for those of you listening, you won't even know, but Gion's back. He had 26 and 5 made threes. David DePino with 17. Jose Mercado with 16. We'll go back to Gian in a second, but Hendel LaRolle had 32. You talked about it. Every time he's there, you know it for that Washed Up Boyz team. He's a huge part of their offense and his ability to score. Leroy Brown, Gian talked about it, 20 points and 4 made threes. And so he's one of those players, and, we've all, multiple teams have said if Jose is going to shoot, that's better for us. And that goes to your point about Leroy, Gian, because, he's a force. And so, you almost feel take the threes, and if you're hitting them, that's how it goes sometimes. But as a defense, you're comfortable with a Leroy Brown, with a Jose Mercado, kind of settling, which may seem strong, but settling for threes rather than constantly attacking because they're so hard to stop down low. We'll see if Gian can get back in here, and we'll just dump him in whenever he gets in. He might be back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
All right, so we talked about it. Kevin Gonzalez, you guys shut down. Leroy Brown had 20, But yeah, I mean, anything else on that game from your team? Kyler talked about kind of them being able to overcome your runs, because I think that was a huge part of it. You guys tried to like land some knockout, a couple 3-pointers in a row, a fast break dunk, and they were able to kind of keep it close. So,
Yeah, I mean, they did a good job of maintaining the game. I don't know if you heard me. I said to Hachi, we're doing a bad job at maintaining this game. Like, we got it up to 11, then we let them get it back to 5, and then we got it up to 12, and then they got back to 7. So we could never, once we got it up, to keep going. But really, the biggest part is having Jose. I mean, the game we lost, which is, I always take an L, and L is an L. We lost no matter who we have. But we had Jose. Like, we didn't have Jose for that whole half of that game. He's an MVP. He's a prior MVP of the Summer League. Charles Alexander is a prior MVP. Myself is a prior MVP. So we have, at one point, 3 MVPs on the floor at the same time. So it's just having him is just, like he said in the interview, or Hachi said in the interview, it's like you have me, you have myself, you have Hachi, you have David, you have Ant, there's some people are like, oh, that's too many mouths to feed. But when you learn to play together with that much talent, it's hard for a defense to be like, okay, let's double team Hachi. Now I'm open. Now Jose's open. Okay, let's shut down Jose. Like, you have to go one-on-one against us. So that's why we're a really tough matchup for a lot of teams. But, and credit realistically to not only Jose, but Hachi. You see him on the lives. It's like this kid, and I've been friends with Hachi for 20 years. This kid, I don't know how he does. He just never gets tired. He's in your face. He's guarding the best player the whole game, the whole time. Just unreal defense. And once we all get into it together, it's just, we just feed off each other. Okay, Jose hit a couple shots. Then he passed the ball. I'll hit a couple shots. Then Charles gets to the rack. David gets a dunk. So we don't play a lot of selfish basketball. You've noticed the first game against Lob was tough. That's when we had the whole team. But since then, we've played Halfway, who was a good team. We played this Washed Up Boyz, who's a good team. And we're starting to slowly learn how to, all play together. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like I tried to forget about that game in between Lob City and this one, right? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, a good point. Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it. We'll kind of stay on the game breakers here, and then we'll do more stuff at the end, kind of some of Gian's picks for MVP and some other stuff like dunk contest favorite. And I'm not going to let him pick himself for any of that crap. So we'll keep it fair. But really, we talked about it, even just me and you talking, and I've mentioned it to Kyler and the interns last summer. Lob City had so much size and you guys didn't, and I think that's one of the changes you kind of alluded to with Jose, with Charles Alexander, with, being able to be more versatile. That showed up against the Washed Up Boyz, and kind of, talk about that and kind of what it does game plan wise for you guys, having those options now where it isn't just, all right, we have to take a ton of threes. We're still scrappy, and you guys were always good on defense. That's not the point. But right. Then, Carl Lee, I don't care how scrappy you are. Someone that size is just too big. So
our size is, so it's a little different, right? So obviously we got Jose, who's 6 whatever, Charles, who's 6 whatever. But the difference is, like, Carl Lee is gigantic. Like, Leroy Brown, very athletic, but he's more of a big. Like, these two guys, and even David as well, they're big, but they're bigger guards. So it's tough to play because they can dribble the ball, they can move, they can. When you got, I don't know, the tall guy on the blue team, the All Waves, right? But he's
Jake.
He's a big.
Mustache,
yeah. Jeff Winchell is a big. So it's different when you're guarding a guy like Jose or Charles that they can just jab step and just go right to the basket. It's different than a back-to-the-basket big, which I think helps us a lot more because ever since I've been in the league, even on the Warriors, our whole, system was go. We had to run and go, run and gun. And these two guys help us with that because they're agile and they can just get up and down the floor as fast as they can, along with me and Hachi and Ant and Serge. So that's why I think it helps us a lot more. So.
Yeah, and speaking of Jeff Winchell, he's setting me up here with a transition. The lone overtime game, the halfway crooks. Let's get to that one. But I got to use my fancy tools. Hold on one second. I hope it worked. I guess we'll figure out if it works. Never mind. There's supposed to be a sound. I'll make Gian do a sound next time.
I heard it.
The halfway crooks. All right, good. The halfway crooks take down All Talk Sports 75-69 in overtime. It was, 10 points in overtime, which is nuts, but it took a lot of effort and back and forth to get there. I missed a rebound, and they got an offensive rebound in a 3, which got us to overtime, so that'll drive me nuts. But 4 guys for the halfway crooks, and we'll let Gian kind of break down even just on that front. But Kyler, this one going into overtime, a really close game throughout. I looked up in the fourth quarter and was like, oh my God, we have 4 guys, which is just tough. And I say it every week because I've been in this position too many times. But in the fourth quarter, to be up 6 with like 5 to go and no subs, I'm like, all right, like now the game's going to slow down. Like I like Jared Hansen. I like Charles Correa. I like, having Jeff to protect the rim when they try to do some stuff. Like that's where you want to get it if you're the halfway crooks with 4 guys. So then, of course, it goes to overtime. So forget all of that because then it comes down to 2 minutes. But what happened in that fourth quarter, Kyler, that kept the game close and what was All Talk able to do to get it to overtime and keep it close?
Yeah, I think they did a good job making use of some tired defenders. And what they really impressed me with is their leading scorer had 15 points. They really were able to spread out the ball. They hit a bunch of threes early to keep them in the game. And then after that, it was everyone chipping in, everyone being able to get on the score sheet. So you guys didn't know who necessarily to focus. Normally, like Gian said, they just focused on Hendel's going to score the points and don't let him be you. But you didn't really have anyone to look at for All Talk Sports, which is why they performed better than they should have if you just start looking at the power rankings. And they had a great performance that game. And then in overtime, it was just experience. It was Legacy League, Joey Zacco hitting a big 3. And just you could see Jeff Winchell will not get my MVP, but boy, he's up there because he is such a presence that it's so hard to drive to the rim when he's in there. And he forced All Talk Sports to be taking shots that in overtime didn't fall and allowed the halfway crooks to pull away.
And I've said it before, so I'll keep it short, but the amount of shots that he impacts, and other players like him too, that are down there and protect the rim, that's not even in the stats, because you don't get blocks for those when somebody maybe won't drive later in the game after getting blocked twice. But Steven Soulier with 15 for All Talk Sports, Justin Bianchi 14, Thomas DeAndrea with 12 and 17 rebounds. He was big, kind of trying to, take away Jeff Winchell, and Mason Link 4 threes. From the corner, number 1. Like, I have nightmares of number 1 on All Talk Sports, to be honest. Like, just big shots by him. But the halfway crooks, Jared Hansen, led the way with 30 and 11 rebounds himself. Jeff Winchell, 13 and 9. We talked about it. I hit 4 threes, thank God. So, Gian, even just on that and kind of talking about overtime, right? We've had 2 or 3 overtime games already just in Rhode Island. And so, I mean, you know it's 2 minutes, it's quick, but like having played in the league now, or even in the close games, even down the stretch in that fourth quarter, like what's some of the stuff you've kind of learned that All Talk Sports will learn, and you kind of have to live it to learn it, but like how is it different than a regular game when it's a close game, down the stretch?
For one, it's just there's no shot clock in this league, so that's huge. You just got to know how to, and this is credit to like Lob and teams like that. You got to know how to win a game. Like, yes, you can go back and forth with the team and get highlights and stuff like that, but you got to know how to manage a game. Like, did you guys have Dom in that game, by the way? All right, so that hurts a lot. But let's just say, like, All Talk, and I haven't seen them play. We're not playing them this year, so I can't really talk on how good or not good or whatever they are. I can't stress to that, so I'll go on the other side. Like, halfway, right? If that team scores 5 in a row, Jared or Charles has to get the ball and slow it down and bring it up the court slow, like not look for a fast basket, take some time off the clock, and that's how, you keep your leads. And like I said before, that's what I was telling Hachi, and that's what Jose said. But in our game, we just got to slow it down because we're going back and forth with this team, and we're missing a shot. They're getting a basket. So, yeah, we're up 15, but we're rushing so much. Just so when you get into the games that, like you said, overtime's 2 minutes. So realistically, you get 1 shot realistically in overtime. If you don't make your first shot, it's kind of tough in overtime because it's only 2 minutes. And even at the end of the game, I watched I tuned in the last second of the All Waves and the Lob City game. I forget who it was, maybe Nuri. Somebody threw a lob and it was a turnover and they got a wide open fast break. It was a 3-point game. And then they missed the layup trying to rush to take that layup. And then that's where the game was over. Because if they would have made that, it would have been a 1-point game. Now Lob City get the ball back and went right down and scored. Now it's a 5-point game. So that's the end of the game. Just little stuff like that. And in the moment, it's tough to do that. You know what I mean? But that's where, the veterans of this league and stuff, they know how to do that. Cody Crawford is great at that. Jared Hansen's great at that. Just point guards in general, just to slow the game down and, keep the game in their court.
Well, and we got lucky, so this is how it'll end, and then we'll get to Lob City. We start overtime, you get the tip, so that's obviously huge. Like getting the ball first so you can put some pressure on. We miss a 3, and I somehow tip it in over Thomas DeAndrea, and it goes in, which is like, again, lucky. There you go. So I'm going to give myself credit for a second, and then they go down and miss a shot, and it turns into a fast break, and Correa kicks it to me, and I hit a 3. So that's 5 points in like 35 seconds in a 2-minute overtime. It just makes it tough. And that's like one, not that All Talk Sports did anything wrong. They missed one shot. And now you're down 5 with a minute left.
Right.
And
tough
it's just
to do. That
spot.
One shot's important.
Right. And so but that's how it goes in overtime in the Legacy League. So yeah, let's see if this transition wants to work for me this time as we get to Lob City able to take care of the All Waves by 7. I heard the end of it. All right, Lob City 5-0, 81-74 over the All Waves. We talked about Cody Crawford. We just mentioned him, 13 points for him, but it was Joe Secator with 34 and 8 and 5 threes. He hit a ton of shots and a ton of tough shots, kind of kept the pressure on. But again, this one, it was only a 22-16 fourth quarter edge for the All Waves. But the past 2 weeks, Gian, we've been talking about how the All Waves against the Halfway Crooks, I forget who they played in between that. Either way, whoever they played, and I'll get it right in a second. The huge fourth quarters. Just huge comebacks, putting the pressure on in the fourth quarter, nearly, making way more threes in the fourth quarter than the rest of the game combined. Juwan Gamble had a huge game, 26 and 4 for the All Waves. Nick Montanino, 16 and 13, a double-double, but only 9 of 19 from 3 for the All Waves compared to 8 for 25 for Lob City. The All Waves, even without Jake Ashstetter, who we were talking about, is one of their bigger bodies, still out-rebounded Lob City, 34-28. So we'll go to Kyler again first, and Gia can kind of fill in anything, because I don't know if you saw the games. We did a lot of prep for this podcast, trust me. Kyler, you were there for sure. Lob City 5-0, continues their run. But the All Waves, and I don't want to not talk about Lob City, but both of these teams showed us stuff where I'm interested to hear what you have to say on kind of both of these teams after this one, Kyler.
Yeah, well, first off, Lob City is 5-0 and has looked like the best team, but every single one of their games have been close, which it has to be a little bit nerve-wracking for them for single elimination playoffs coming in the second half. But it was really a situation where always kept this close because they were able to hit threes. And then just like with All Talk Sports, the threes faded off at the end, the points margin increased. It was some huge threes early by Juwan Gamble, really kept the score close. I think there was a situation where they were down by 8. He hit 2 in a row. All of a sudden, that's a 2-point game. They were able to even it up. And so it was really a great game by All Waves, but Lob City yet again just proves that experience, Joe Secator, Nuri, big players who make big plays win games.
And so I'll throw it to Gian on this. You can speak to Lob City in a single elimination, situation and kind of your outlook on that. Yeah, well, and so it's not Kyler's fault at all. The version of Lob City we are seeing now is they've turned it on at times. So this is a little different than even last season where they really were like cruising, and looked like a very different team in the playoffs. This is probably 60%, 65% of like what they're going to be when they are like fully on because they know it's a one and done, right? So we see stretches of it now and they're the best team and they deserve kind of this conversation. But there's another level for them coming. And that's, again, not your fault because it's Kyler's first season. So I'll throw it to Gian on that and kind of what they do well in those situations and what the All Waves can improve on as we get to the playoffs, because it is ratcheted up even more than we're seeing now.
Yeah, I'll just start on Lob. They're always great. They like I said, they know that it matters in the playoffs. They said it a million times. To put it in perspective, my team last year, well, not last summer. Yeah, last summer, right? we blew them out in the regular season, both games, bad. And then they beat us in the semifinals pretty bad. I think it was like a 15-point game or something like that. So it really only comes down to playoff. But this is the most, and they're still really good. Cody knows I love them. Colin knows I love them. And I give them all the props. But this is the most beatable I've seen this team, because of Colin not being there. Colin, from what I know, this is your first year, Kyler, but Colin is he's like a 1A. Joe's the 1A, 1B, however you want to talk about that. Colin is, a 27 and 10 and 15 a night. Like, so now you're forced on Joe or somebody else to step up to fill that 27. And that's tough to do. It's not like it's like a role player. Like, that's their guy that went down. So now you need somebody else to replace that, and that's a tough ask to do. But they're still finding ways to get it done, and that's why they have 8 championships. You know what I mean? They know how to win. They know how to manage games and stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes playoff time, you'll see. You see a little bit of smack talk now in the regular season, but it gets way more intense. It gets way more critical in the playoffs time. That's playoff basketball in this league is fun to do. And for the All Waves, I think they need to look at this game as, a win. They had it within a minute left. It was like a 3-point game against a team who's won 8 championships. Like, that you got to take your wins when you can. You played a great game. It's just, stuff didn't fall your way. You missed one long rebound, and then they're gone, and they take it to 5. Like, you take 1 or 2 possessions in that game that goes your way, you might win that game. So they got to take this as a win. However they played, and again, I only tuned in for like the last couple minutes, but however they played, they just got to build off of that, because that's the top of the league, right? Lob City's obviously number 1. So you play like that against the number 1, you should play like that and win games against the 3s, the 4s, the 5s. However, I don't know where they're at in the power rankings, but when you get to those games where, okay, it's not Lob City, that's how you got to play on top of it, So. Yep.
And just to kind of put the finishing touches on the Lob City conversation, Gian said it, not me. They look beatable. I didn't freaking say it. So look at Gian. You can put the bullseye on his back, and he's all about it. So I didn't say that. I didn't say they look beatable. But losing Colin is a big part of that, and I think it then shifts offensive responsibility to Almar, who's played great, and he's been awesome on defense, picking up a lot of that, to Kavai Sampson, who we talked to after the game. I don't know if it was Kyler or it was Matt, but he's been a big addition for them and just doing everything on defense, getting easy buckets for them, and kind of supplementing Joe having to kind of be the main person on offense now. But think about, as a defense, all right, Colin's huge and uses his body and can hit shots, but is always about getting inside and getting easy ones and putting the pressure on the defense that way. And then you blink and he throws it out to Joe Secator for a 3, and you're like, we just played great defense, and then this guy's going to hit these tough shots, right?
All right.
It shifts, right? Where now it's like, all right, they're still great, but now the first part of that equation is wiped out. Where now it's like, all right, now we can kind of focus more on Joe, and there's still other pieces. This is not a, bad conversation we're having, but it's the truth, where now it just shifts. The responsibilities shift. And so we're going to see how they adjust to that, and they're adjusting well. They're 5-0.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is just to go quick, because this is his first year. Like, Lob City, the years before, they were 30 bombing everybody, every game. They were winning by 30, 40 points. So when every win that they've got is like within a 10-point, game, that's not normal for them. Like, they're used to, and they had the Jose on our team was on their team. They had the Carl Lee, who's just a specimen, dude, of a person. So, like, and they were just blowing teams out and walking down the court. Like, they would just walk down the court, easy basket, easy basket, easy basket. So to see them in crucial games against, teams that are in the lower part of the power rankings is odd to see out of them, because those are the teams in the past that it's like a 50-point game at halftime. So, but like I said, they're still finding ways to win. They're still the top dogs. They're still the prior champions. So everybody's out to get them, So they're still number 1 in my book.
It's almost better. I could see it working out better for them this way, because they don't get to relax. They're not going to, whatever. Not that they relax in the playoffs, but they're going to be more ready as a unit for those close games, because
right.
They've already done it 3 times in the regular season, right? It's almost it's going to work out well for them, as we know. A team that almost had them, the Air Mambas, come up short to the Road Dogs in a 3-point game. Let's get to that one. And so the Road Dogs get their second win. The Air Mambas, who had that kind of one possession overtime game against Lob City earlier, is also now 2-3, and the Road Dogs would actually jump them in the standings. We were talking about the Road Dogs previously, and even last week, 1-3, like they've been in all these games. They're now ahead of the Air Mambas in the standings because having beaten them in week 3 by 3 points, and this was a double-digit game with about 4 or 5 minutes to go. So let's get back to Kyler on this. And what did the Road Dogs do? Because we'll talk about the Air Mambas and how they're improved this season, even though they are 2-3 and they're in all of these games. And they're kind of going through a lot of the similar close game learning stuff that we've been talking about on this show. But the Road Dogs put it together and took it to the Air Mambas and were up by 10, 11, 12 points in the fourth quarter. They let up a little bit, so it's kind of back on that theme of not finishing. And then the Air Mambas hit some shots, they missed some free throws, and it's a 3-point game. And they're like, what the heck is going on? It's one of those, like, how is this such a close game right now? But what did the Road Dogs do throughout this one, Kyler, that impressed you and allowed them to kind of really get back in the middle of the pack in the standings?
Yeah, and they didn't even shoot particularly well. I mean, 9.5% from three is not great at all. But in general, what's been struggling the Road Dogs is they've had so many people. They've been having trouble getting into a rhythm. They've been playing choppy, short shifts. And they were missing 2 people. They were missing Anthony Lyons, and then Rion Watts was serving the suspension. And Rion's someone who gets tons of rebounds, scores a lot of points for that team, and just has the ball a lot. And then maybe, not that they're better without him, but in this game, lots of people were freed up more, and they were able to play a more free-flowing style of basketball where lots of people were able to score lots of points, with Shaq Audrey with 20, Kareem Cooper 16, Mark Washington 12, Del Butler 12. It was a lot of mouths getting a lot of opportunities to eat in this game.
And we'll get to Gian in a second. He's never played the Road Dogs, I don't believe.
Next week.
Yeah, so that'll be a good one. So we'll kind of get his preview on that. But Aiden Dozos for the Air Mambas continues playing well, even though only 3 made threes. He had some good looks, 21 points for him. Nick Lemoyne with 20, and Luis Ramirez with 13. But again, they come up short. So Gian, yeah, even talking about either of these teams, what do you think looking ahead to next week or whatever week it is coming up when you do get the Road Dogs? Kind of like, what's the plan for that one?
Fire truck going on behind me. I think that both of these guys going to pass. Yeah, both of these teams, and I know a couple of the guys on the Road Dogs that played against them on 10 feet. Obviously, I know Aiden and Nick very well. I know Lewis and Mario. Both these teams are not on paper are not 2 and 3 teams. They're both very good teams. They're both talented. So this, to me, is just more from what I look at both teams. It's got to be a chemistry thing. It has to be, because the names on these rosters are too good to not be a 2 and 3 team. It just doesn't make sense in my eyes. And even on the Road Dogs, like they're huge. Dell is huge. They got a couple other guys that are just stupid athletic. They have good guards in Watts. So like that's going to be a good matchup for us. We've already talked about it in our group chat. I won't spill anything for them so they can see it, but we've talked about what we could potentially do and stuff like that. But yeah, both these teams, they need to have like a team, meet whatever they got to do on how to get back on track, because like I said, yes, everybody makes playoffs, but seeding wise, if you're lower, you're going to be playing, a halfway or a game breakers or a Lob City. So it's a tough matchup to go first round of the playoffs. You know what I mean? So you ideally want to get that middle of the pack for them, get another middle of the pack team, get a win under your belt with confidence going into the higher seeds. So,
yeah. And that just goes to the depth. I think the amount of teams that have some talent where things go, can go any way if you're not ready every week. One of those teams and that is kind of making a run and is actually also 2 and 3, I believe. They might be 3 and 2. Hold on, let's get it right. Yeah, Providence defense improves to 3 and 2, so they are above both of those teams we were just talking about after their Week 5 win. Awesome. Yeah, it's not working in my ears, but that's fine. We have cool sounds. We got to use them. Providence defense led by Jesus Thames, 43 and 16. Juan Jimenez had 26 and 13, but Providence defense takes care of velocity, 101.75. Talk about athletic, talk about, skill, and it's their first time in the league, and they're 3-2, and they're kind of figuring it out. And so that's one of those teams where I want to see them against, and I don't even know if we do. I can try to do this quick. They get the Washed Up Boyz next week. I like that as Providence defense. They get the Game Breakers in week 7, and they get Lob City in week 8. Perfect. We're going to learn a lot about Providence defense, and not that they're not good because they're playing well right now, but that's going to show us. I mean, those are 3 of the top teams in the standings. The top 3 teams in the standings, along with the Skyhawks, not to totally discredit them, but let's keep going in this order. I like it. Kyler, this one, Providence defense, you can just touch on them and kind of some of their chemistry things, because I know, they kind of were able to get to the rim at will in this one, so never really in doubt, I don't think. But yeah, just really what you've seen through the first 5 games for Providence defense.
Yeah, I mean, it was 101 points. It could have been 150 if they wanted to. Jesus Thames, you could tell if he just wanted to score, he would just dribble by everyone and dunk. Velocity is one of the lower teams that we have, so it's tough to line this up against if they were playing Lob City, Game Breakers, Halfway Crooks. So it's tough to draw all that much from this one, but the energy from Jesus Thames was also just something we haven't seen so far, and like teammates were loving it, crowd was loving it. That's something I would want to see in a bigger game. Just in general, they started with 3 people only, and were able to go the whole game, keeping the levels high. So really impressive performance from Providence defense. And as we always say, you can only beat the team you're playing against. So that's a week well done on their books.
Yeah, and so let me throw it to Gian with a trivia question here. The last time you played with only 3 guys, I mean, how many points did you have?
A lot, to say the least. We played 3 people. We played I think it was the lowest seed in the league, and I had 90. I think that is the league record. I know it's the league in Rhode Island, but I think it's all 3 leagues. No one has been higher, which is cool. But yeah, like he was saying, so this game is like Providence defense that's a team that, high energy team. They're going to be in your face. My boy Wook is doing backflips and stuff in the game. So it's a very energetic team, but this is more, and this is not to discredit Velocity. They're, they signed up for the league, all that stuff. And same thing. It's just more of a stat padding game, if that makes sense. Like, not to say they're not great. Obviously they do well. They do shoot the ball well. But it's just a game where, this is a game that Hachi had a 60-whatever-point triple-double. So it's just, they look great in those type of games. But like you said, next week they play the Washed Up Boyz, who we had a, back-and-forth game with. And then they play us, and then they play Lob. So those are the games where you really find out who's who in this league. So hopefully they bring that energy to next week, because Washed Up Boyz like to talk. They like to talk. They talk to us. We like to talk. And Lob City likes to talk. So it's not going to be an easy game the next three games down the road for them. So I'm excited to see, the standings on how they do next week, and then excited to see them on the court the week after. So
yeah, so let's get to the last game. We'll see if Kyler has a question, and we'll wrap it up. I know we're going a little long, but the Skyhawks 4-1, and so I think they have some competitive games coming up as well. But let's get to their week 5 performance after a full calendar week off, and kind of who they have coming up next. All right, Skyhawks, Noah James, 37 points. Zeke Burgess, 22 and 15, and they continue to roll 98-46 over the Muffin Tops. Let me give you I know I did this last week when I was rambling by myself, but the Skyhawks get All Talk Sports next week, so semi-frisky. I'm in on that one. They then get the Road Dogs in week 7. And the Skyhawks then get the Washed Up Boyz in week 8. So yeah, the Washed Up Boyz, we talked about them. They have some big games coming up. The Skyhawks do as well, but they're currently in, 4th, 3rd, tied for 3rd. Actually, they're going to be higher in the standings, aren't they? Hold on. Yeah, they're 4-1, so they're tied for 2nd with the Game Breakers and Washed Up Boyz, all with 1 loss. So let's go to Gian first quickly on this one and the Skyhawks. Just anything you've seen on them as they're 4-1 and kind of what they do well.
Yeah, they shoot the ball well. We played them week 1. I don't know who they played after us. I'd have to look at their schedule. But they're on
I
a good
got you.
win. Yeah, you want to run it down for
Yeah,
me?
so they beat the All Waves by 7. They beat Providence defense. We were just talking about that by 9, so still a close game. They took care of the Air Mambas by 15 and the Muffin Tops most recently. So still some games they had to earn it.
Yeah, no, they had a good game. This kid Noah, he's on fire right now. But like I said, you gotta win. So they had great wins, and this is not to discredit them, but you go back at the first interview that I did. It was the first one of the week. I gave them credit. They're a very athletic team. They're gonna be good in this league. I didn't know if it was the first game jitters or whatever, but they lost by 30 to us, and that's not to clown on them. It's just you know that's a big gap of a loss, So but they rattled off a bunch of wins. They got it together. I do think they're a great team. I think they're going to make a playoff run. I just like to see them play, the Washed Up Boyz and the Halfway Crooks and the Live Cities. Because when you play, the teams that are same skill level as you, you got to win those games, really. You know what I mean? Because if you drop those games and then opposed to dropping the games against the higher seed, now you're just getting down that ladder. But that team is good. Like I said, this kid's on fire. Maybe it was just Hachi's defense the first game. I don't know how he did the first game, but yeah, they're a good team, and they're gonna make a run in the playoff for sure.
Kyler, we've talked about Skyhawks, maybe not last week, but even when you were last on. Do you have a question for Gian? And then I have one, and we're going to get out of here. But this is your time, Kyler. This is big. This is bigger than an interview. But yeah, ask him whatever you want.
About the Skyhawks or just
No,
in
no,
general?
anything. Yeah, in general. Yeah, about the league.
What team that's low in the standings do you think, based on your experience, is going to climb up before playoff time?
So
I
let me do this
I
really
think
quick.
no, I have my answer. I think
Okay,
it's
good. Go ahead.
I think it's the Road Dogs. That team is too good to be 2-3. I'm already hoping. I hope we blow them out. That's not a tie, but I'm almost preparing. It's going to be a very close game till the end against them next week. They're a good team. I don't know how they're 2-3. I don't know what's going on with their whole locker room situation. Because I don't know his name, but they said it in their interview, chemistry issues and stuff like that. So that team is. I could see that team potentially going all the way with the roster and the people that are on that. But yeah, that would be my pick. They're a good team.
Yeah, and also like looking ahead for playoffs. I mean, the top four get a bye, and then 5 and 6 get Muffin Tops and Velocity, 2 games that should be taken care of. But that 7th and 8th seed, I know you guys are probably more in the hunt for top 4. But do you guys think about the gap between 7th place and 6th place in a league like this?
Yeah, and seeding matters. So to last year, we dropped a game. So the Game Breakers, we dropped a very important game to the Warriors because if we would have won that game, we would have met Lob City in the finals. But because we dropped just one game all season, we met Lob City in the semifinals, and then we ended up losing. So winning games is important. You might think, oh, everybody makes playoffs, this and that, but now seeding wise, you might run into somebody that you don't really want to run into. Obviously, you got to play good to win a game, regardless. Doesn't matter. But it's important because, like I said, we lost one game last season, and it ended up. I won't say costing us. I think we should have won that game. I'm gonna toot my team. We should have won that game. But it doesn't matter. Now we run into Lob. I would have much rather played Lob in the semifinals, and that's not a shot at Joey's team. I would have rather played Halfway Crooks because I love the color purple. Every time I play Joey, I hit 10 threes. So, but yeah, no, it's just those wins are important. You might think they're not, but you gotta, regular season is important.
Yeah, it was 2 undefeated teams, and they played, I believe, in the last week. Or
the last week of the season.
One-loss team, right? They had 1 loss and undefeated, and then the undefeated team lost, and because of some tiebreakers and all of that, it put Lob City and Game Breakers on the same side of the bracket. Yeah, and you still have to beat nearly everybody anyway, but yeah, it affected the standings. Quickly, and you can keep this one shorter because I appreciate all the time, Gian.
I got
It's possible basketball MVP for the regular season, which means whoever wins regular season MVP gets some cool certificates and some free stuff, which is cool. We got a sponsor. If you can't pick yourself, because I know you would pick yourself,
Absolutely.
former MVP, I believe, right?
Yeah,
You've won.
I was
Okay.
MVP and then 2-time Offensive Player of the Year running.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't ask about. All right, cool.
You know what I
mean? So if you had to pick someone so far though through 5 games, right? So it's probably going to be a higher seeded team. Someone who has an impact on a team, maybe not scoring the most points, but your MVP so far this season, Gian, and we'll get out of here.
If it's not myself, I think if it's not myself, it's a 2-headed race between obviously Joe, undefeated, 30-something points a game, whatever it might be, and then like Joey said last week, it's Hachi as well. Hachi is on offense and defense our best player. Strictly on defense, he's the best perimeter defender I think in the league. I tell him, you guard the best person every single game. He'll do it for the whole 90 minutes, whatever it is we play. Hachi is very underrated. He gets overshadowed a lot by the bigger names. He did last year too, by myself and Jose. But if Hachi was on his own team, he'd be going crazy. He's the guy, but I think it's a 2-headed race between them. Obviously, you have the guys like Hendel, who's doing great too, but they gotta continue to win some games if they can finish 7-1, whatever it is, then you have a case there. But my picks would be either Joe or Hachi.
Yeah, and I think Hendel, if the Washed Up Boyz, right? Like you said, 7-1, 6-2 is probably pushing it, just because Lob City will be undefeated or 7-1 most likely.
Correct.
With the remaining schedule. But yeah, so that's kind of how Hendel gets in the mix. Noah James, if they get the top seed and rattle off a bunch of wins, and he's like leading the Skyhawks, and but yeah, then it comes down to what's your opinion of valuable, right? And that's a whole separate conversation of how we gauge that. But Gian, thank you very much. I appreciate the time and joining us.
Sure.
Kyle, good job
For having us.
Yes. It's always a good time. You were on last summer too, and it was a good one. So
yeah, we did the immaculate grade and all that stuff. It was cool.
Yeah. We're not that fancy anymore.
Shout out to Foot Doctor.
Dan Ruggiero and PJ Thomas.
Yeah.
That's right. Shout out those boys. Kyler, shout out to you. Thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll see you for week 6 next week.